Greetings of peace. Today I want to talk about the end of marriage as we know it. Marriage has been a cornerstone of human society for a few thousand years now. Um, with the advent of technology, feminism, etc., things have changed. Now the genders don't really need each other like that. You know what I'm saying? How can I say? How can I say? I mean, in previous generations, for a man to have sexual access to a woman, he needed to get married. He had to have receipts and be. He had to have receipts and had to demonstrate to his community that he was responsible and that he was hardworking and that he had a certain type of character and that he would be able to take care of a family, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I shouldn't say that's all the case. Shouldn't say that was always the case. Women in general had less financial opportunities and they were less educated in previous generations, so they had to rely on the man, and not all of these men were good. Um, you know, so today, I'm noticing online, and in the world that a lot both genders don't feel like the juice is worth the squeeze in regards to marriage and cohabitation and children and family, et cetera, et cetera. You know, with okay, so how can I say? I mean, women today don't need a man for their provisioning. They have job opportunities, they have education, and then there's birth control, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, there's less risk of sex for them in terms of like the consequences of sex because they have condoms, they have abortion, they have Plan B, that kind of stuff. So, in previous generations, there was less of that. You know what I'm saying? So, a woman was having sex. It was a big risk because there was a high chance she was going to get pregnant, and she needed a man to stay around and provide for her and the child. So she had to be more choosy. Today, she can go strictly based off her lust because technology has enabled her to do so, and um, they don't need men for their provisioning because now they're making more money than men, and a lot of them, the graduation rates of women are higher than men right now. That kind of stuff. Hold on. So what is this about for the future? To be honest, if you look, like, pretty much in most countries in Europe, in the West, the Americas, North and South, Europe, and most of Asia, they're not having enough children to sustain the population, meaning more people are dying than children are being born. So if you look on these forums, these internet forums, et cetera, et cetera, a lot of people who come from these different countries, they are complaining about their birth rate, et cetera, and they're having some sort of crisis because they feel like they're being genocided, et cetera, and a lot of these countries are importing immigrants from other countries who have a much more higher reproduction rate than the natives of those particular countries. Now, that's not on accident. See, people at the top, the elites at the top, have all this info. The average rank and file citizen is a domesticated product to people who are at the top. They need workers and they need people to produce. They need people to produce because that affects the GDP of the country. It's a product. You know what I'm saying? They need workers. They need people who will produce and keep things going. So since the natives of these countries aren't even having enough kids anyway, so I understand why these immigrants are being imported at the expense of the native population. Now, that being said, with the decline of marriage in today and the divorce rate being higher than ever, what I'm more concerned about is the youth, because children who grow up in single parent homes are more likely to turn to drugs, gangs. They're less likely to drop out of school. They're more likely to end up in menial jobs. more likely to struggle with mental health, suicide, molestation, rape, etc., and that's male and female. So, you're having these children in these single parent homes, then the parents got to work 8, 10, 12 hours. You got to leave your child with a stranger or with family. And even if you're leaving with family, there's no guarantee that your children are going to be well looked after, etc., etc. So, it could lead. I think this whole dynamic we have our society is gonna implode on multiple fronts. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe some new form of type of cohabitation will arise. Maybe some type of polygyny or polygamy or polyam or whatever these terms, you can go look them up. But anyways, in general, men feel like the women today are not wife material, that they not really, that they add very little to the life. You know what I'm saying? They can't really cook. They're not really into chores. They're not really into rearing children. They're more into themselves these days. That's how a lot of these men are talking, et cetera, et cetera. And then a lot of men are concerned because most divorces are initiated by women. And, the average marriage maybe lasts like 3 to 7 years. And then they have the financial investment and how the stuff they work for, the little that they have, could be taken away from them. And, how there's no fault divorce, how a woman can just wake up, decide she doesn't want to be with you, and, take what you've earned and then get alimony, child support, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of men are concerned on the financial front. And then on the woman's side, they're saying that a lot of men aren't really, attractive. They do not know how to stimulate their emotions, relate to them. They don't really, they're saying that a lot of these men are only just like a walking wallet. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these women don't want to be domesticated. They don't want to just, solely have the attention of one man, or just sleep with one man for an extended period of time, and how they feel like the men in their life try to control them. They can't dress sexy. They can't go out with their friends. They can't have social media, girl trips, da da da. So a lot of women are opting out, you know what I'm saying? They don't really want to be tied down and have the family kids. They'd rather be a career girl, makes X amount of dollars, travel. So these are all symptoms of modern society. With technology now, we no longer have to, the rise of individualism is up. Before, you were part of a community, your family, et cetera, you were part of a ecosystem. Now we are, but it's more like, how can I say, it's commercialized, you know what I'm saying? Everything, the culture of the world has gone from family, community, and neighborly to corporate and global. You know what I'm saying? So the culture of today is corporate. You know what I'm saying? And so it's gonna be interesting because these are unprecedented times. It's gonna be interesting over the next years and decades how the social system particularly in the United States, unfolds. And what will be interesting is to see how people who today in their 20s and 30s are going to be in their 40s and 50s, what predicament they will find themselves in. Will they be fulfilled? What will they think about their decisions and their choices that they made in their past? So it's going to be an interesting ride. What are your thoughts?